So I want to talk about this. No, I'm not talking about the wonderful taste of spam musubi, but the price you see right over here. Right now, it's $1.69 for one spam musubi at 7-Eleven. But what would happen if the minimum wage was increased from $10.10 to $18 an hour in Hawaii? How much would the spam musubi cost then? If you're not aware, there is a big debate going on right now in Hawaii as to whether there should be an increase in the minimum wage. One of the many concerns is the effect that any increase would have on food prices. As one article points out, the increases wouldn't be too much. For a spam musubi, it would only need to be increased by about 9 cents. That's it. So in this video, I want to take a look at that article that makes that claim that food prices in Hawaii would only increase by a little if the minimum wage were to be increased by so much. And let me know how you think a minimum wage increase in Hawaii would affect food prices in the comments below. All right, big warning here. I know that talking about the minimum wage is a very sensitive topic, and there are passionate people on both sides of this issue. And while it may sound like I'm arguing against an $18 minimum wage, I assure you that I'm focusing on the price increase of the food and not the actual wage itself. I'm also not really talking about the effect that raising the minimum wage has on unemployment in Hawaii, since the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism's own study on this issue says that the results are ambiguous and inconclusive. So, would you pay 31 cents more when you eat out to help end poverty in Hawaii? This was the opening question to an article I read that talked about how an $18 minimum wage wouldn't dramatically increase food prices when you eat out. The assertion is that food prices in Hawaii will only need to be increased by about 5.4% to accommodate a 78% increase in the minimum wage. And other estimates for increases range from 1.17% to as high as 15.9%. However, the conclusion based on the studies cited said that 5.4% is most likely. So what that means is this spam musubi may increase from $1.69 to $1.78, or just 9 cents. And these are the expected increases for other foods we may buy in Hawaii. The study notes that while these are estimates, it demonstrates that even if the full cost of a minimum wage is passed on to the consumers, it would only raise prices by a small amount. Now that 5.4% increase seems a little bit too low, or is it just me? I figured the best way to know is to just ask. That's what my dad used to say when I was growing up. If you don't know, no shame, just ask. So that's what I did. I reached out to several local businesses and just asked them what they thought about the increase and what it would mean for food prices. Highway Inn, a local favorite, got back to me. Thank you, by the way, for getting back to me, and shared what that increase would mean. For something like the pork la, which is really good, by the way, there would be an estimated increase of at least $3. And that's for the a la carte dish, which is currently priced at $12.95. So that right there is a 23% increase. Highway Inn also mentioned that an increase in the minimum wage would also mean that suppliers could pass along their increases in labor costs if they have to raise their food prices due to the increase in minimum wage. And I'm thinking that could go as far back as the pig farm, or even before that in the chain of people who are involved to get that pig and lau onto your plate at the restaurant. And these costs are said to be estimated to be another 10% or more. And so we're looking at maybe a 30% increase, which is much higher than the 5.4%. Hawaiian Chip Company also got back to me. Thank you for getting back to me. And the general manager said that by their calculations, prices on products would have to increase by 27% to accommodate the minimum wage increase, but that a 10 to 15% increase was more likely due to competition from other snacks made elsewhere. What I appreciate about the response I received is that it explained other things that we non-business owners don't think about when it comes to costs for running a business, and other things that the company would have to do to continue to stay afloat. Now, obviously, I can't prove a point based on just 2 examples. However, I just wanted to share what I learned from those 2 local businesses. I wish that more of the places I reached out to would have responded back, but that's all I could find out by the time I made this video. So thank you to Highway Inn and Hawaiian Chip Company. Again, I'm not trying to argue the validity of those studies that were cited to come to the conclusion that all it would take is a 5.4% increase. However, there are some things to consider that I don't think we can just apply that situation or that model to Hawaii in 2022. Now, I'm not saying that the 5.4% increase isn't possible or likely, but I think there are three things that are stopping me from believing that the increase will be so small. The first thing is economies of scale, or big business versus the crack seed shop. It seemed like a lot of the studies focused on food and beverages that I assume could be manufactured at scale, with several of the studies focusing on fast food. And because of that, the businesses that were looked at in the study may be able to absorb more of the cost when the wages were increased. But it's hard to imagine that the effects would be the same for that local crack seed shop down the street as they would to McDonald's or Burger King. I just don't see how it's quite comparable. And I think what's going to end up happening is that mom and pop shop may have to reduce hours, and the owner, they themselves, would just have to work more hours, because that in a way would save them a lot of money. The second thing is the costs in Hawaii. Now, I won't go over all of the added costs of doing business in Hawaii, including the high taxes and the mandatory health insurance coverage for businesses, but things do cost more in Hawaii because we have to ship most of our things here, including 90% of our food. And I don't know if the studies factored that in. My guess is probably not, because why would they? But geography is important to note here, because in estimating the extent of the pass-through, the study was only able to use 82 of the 354 minimum wage hikes in their full sample, and data from only 6 metro areas. Now, I'm not saying that that can't be used. It's just how much of that data's applicability works here in Hawaii when things just costs more. And the third thing is a post-pandemic world. We live in a very different time, even from just like 2 years ago. The primary study used to come up with the estimate 0.36% increase for every 10% increase in the minimum wage was based on samples from 1978 to 2015. And that's a good amount of years, but our economy has changed so much since the 1970s and 80s and 90s. Now, I'm not saying that it's not helpful to look back at how society used to be, but things are just so different. Businesses, employer-employee relationships are so different now. Really, how useful can those models be from just 10 years ago? I mean, yeah, it's all we have to make educated projections, but things change so quickly. With supply chains being strained and the cost of everything going up due to things like inflation, I'd say that there are many economic models that just don't apply to life in 2022. And it's not their fault, but these are not your typical times. And so to answer the opening question of the article, yes, I would pay 31 cents more to end poverty in Hawaii. However, I don't think it's that simple. Until the cost of living in Hawaii goes down, things are still gonna be hard. And hey, maybe my concerns are wrong. And if the minimum wage increases to $18, the prices of food we enjoy won't go up by 25% or more. In which case, that's great. Or if food prices do go up by a lot, maybe we just don't eat out as much as we used to and we cook more at home. But I do think we have to be cautious about big changes like this. And maybe that caution comes from my curiosity of how my wages would be affected and whether the cost of living goes up for me and others who make more than minimum wage. Just the basic question, would we get a pay increase that is proportional to that of minimum wage workers? And if so, where does that money come from? So let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and aloha.